The day 3 diesel monsters showed up in my driveway, I learned something hilarious about community standards. Apparently they only apply when you're the one getting crushed by them. I'm standing there in work boots and yesterday's coffee breath, and the HOA president is smiling like she just won a raffle, while her trucks hold my life hostage. And yeah, I know how that sounds like some suburban soap opera, except my $18,000 worth of tools were locked behind a garage door I suddenly couldn't open even an inch. Dump truck blocking the mouth of my driveway, skid steer parked so tight its bucket was basically kissing my steel garage door, flatbed trailer sealing the whole thing like a cork, engines idling, diesel hanging in the air so thick I could taste it on the back of my tongue. It wasn't a parking mistake. It was a statement. And right there by the curb, clipboard tucked under one arm like she was born with it, stood Karen Whitfield, HOA president, queen of Pinewood Estates, and the kind of woman who could ruin your week without raising her voice above polite brunch volume. She goes real sweet. Violation of Ordinance 4B. All work must stop immediately until proper permits are filed with the county. I blink at her slow because I'm not a dramatic man. I wire hospitals, schools, dental offices, stuff where one wrong move doesn't just make somebody mad, it makes somebody dead. When something shorts out, you don't panic, you diagnose. So I just say, this is my land. I don't need a permit to work on my own property. Her smile tightens like a zip tie. Emergency authority, she says like she's reading a bedtime story. Emergency, there was no fire, no flood, no exposed wiring, no screaming children, no smoke, just my driveway, my garage, my livelihood, and her little army of machines humming like a threat. I didn't argue, not out there. I walked around the side, went into my garage through the side entry, shut the door behind me, and the first thing I noticed was the silence inside. Cool concrete under my boots, the familiar smell of clean metal and sawdust, the kind of calm that usually settles my brain. I reached up and pulled the red emergency release cord on the opener, clunked, the motor disengaged. Then I slid the manual deadbolt pin through the track, the one most people don't even know exists, a steel nope that turns an automatic door into a wall. Outside, Karen's voice changed, sharper, less brunch, more blade. "Mr. Smith, what are you doing?" I flipped the breaker to the opener system, dark, silent, dead. Then I locked the side door from the inside, click. And I called the sheriff. But to understand how we got to a sheriff being summoned over a driveway full of trucks, you've got to rewind 6 months back before any of this existed, back when my biggest problem was the kind of silence that comes after a divorce. I bought my house on Maple Street right after my marriage imploded. 20 years with one person. Then suddenly you're alone in a half-empty place where every sound echoes like it's judging you. I didn't buy the house because it was pretty. I bought it for the garage. Wide. Deep. Solid slab. Room for my work van, my benches, my parts bins, my sanity. I rebuilt my workshop like I was rebuilding my spine. Every tool had a place, voltage testers lined up, wire strippers neat like surgical instruments, extension cords wrapped clean, never tangled. Order matters when everything else feels out of order, and after a divorce, everything is out of order. My daughter Riley understood that. She was 15, old enough to see the cracks, young enough to still want to spend weekends with her dad. She'd sit on an overturned bucket while I sorted parts, asking about breakers and circuits like she was studying for a final. "Why does this one trip?" she asked once, holding up a GFCI outlet. "Because it protects people," I told her. "It senses danger before you do." She liked that answer like it meant the world still had systems that made sense. That garage wasn't just storage, it was stability. And the contract I had starting Monday morning, the biggest I'd landed since the divorce, a medical complex renovation, everything I needed was behind that steel garage door. Specialty gear, testers, expensive stuff that makes a job go smooth instead of turning into a disaster. So when Karen blocked my driveway, she didn't just annoy me, she reached for the throat of my livelihood. Pinewood Estates looks peaceful from the outside, tree-lined streets, sprinklers ticking at dawn, retirees walking tiny dogs like it's their job. The HOA started 15 years ago, back when property values started rising, and everybody got nervous about standards. At first it was normal, lawn care, snow removal, keeping the entrance sign clean. $85 a month, reasonable. Most people just wanted quiet. Karen wanted control. She wasn't loud. That's the thing. A loud bully is easier. You can point and say, "That right there, that's the problem." Karen was polished blazers and soft colors, gold jewelry catching the sun, hair always fixed, nails always done. white Lexus in her driveway, like it had been parked with a ruler and a prayer. She'd smile on the sidewalk and ask about your family, then slap a violation notice on your door the next morning. Community standards, she'd say, like it was scripture. And the bylaws, oh man. HOA bylaws are written like a fog machine, just vague enough to drift wherever the person in charge wants to push them. Karen specialized in interpretation. Over the years, she'd authored clarification addendums, minor updates. She called them, and somehow those updates always expanded her authority. Most people didn't push back. They paid the fines, repainted the trim, adjusted the mailbox. Peace is easier than confrontation, and Karen counted on that like a paycheck. Then I planted wildflowers. Not weeds, not junk, native poppies and lupins bright, alive, honest. They didn't match the uniform green carpet stretching down Maple Street, and that was enough. The first violation notice showed up taped to my door on heavy paper with an embossed seal. Thick envelope, my name printed bold like I'd been summoned to court. Riley was out front, crouched near the flowers, picking one carefully to press in a book. "Dad," she called, holding up an orange poppy. "These are my favorite." I opened the envelope and read the words like they were describing a toxic spill. Non-compliant landscaping disrupts aesthetic harmony. Remove all non-conforming vegetation. Within 10 days, $50 per day thereafter. I looked at my yard. It wasn't overgrown. Beds edged clean. Soil tidy. Flowers deliberate. Riley looked up at my face. "Are we in trouble?" That question hit heavier than the notice. "No," I said calm, "we're not in trouble." But I knew something had shifted. That night, after Riley went back to her mom's, I sat at the kitchen table with the HOA charter on my laptop. If you work electrical long enough, you learn to read fine print, permits, codes, liability language. One wrong assumption can cost you thousands. I read line by line, and here's the funny part, nowhere did it ban native plants. In fact, the original charter encouraged environmentally responsible landscaping. So the next morning I called the HOA office. Karen answered on the second ring, voice smooth like she'd been waiting. "Mr. Smith." "Karen," I said, "which specific bylaw prohibits native wildflowers?" A pause, not long, just long enough. "The board has determined your landscaping fails to meet community standards." "I understand that," I said. "I'm asking for the ordinance number." Another pause, colder this time. "The general aesthetic provision. Can you direct me to the section?" And that's when I heard it. The shift, not anger, offense. Like I'd insulted her religion. "You may prefer a neighborhood with looser standards," she said, and she hung up. That phone call was the moment Karen realized I wasn't going to nod politely and disappear into conformity, and I swear to you, the very next morning I stepped outside to load my van, and there she was across the street with a camera. Not a phone, a camera. Click, click, click. Documenting my driveway like she was building a case. I locked eyes with her. She didn't look away, just smiled like we were sharing a joke. Then came the second envelope, unauthorized commercial vehicle storage. My work van, a Ford Transit, modest lettering, nothing obnoxious. I checked the charter again, commercial freight vehicles exceeding passenger dimensions, that wasn't me. But Karen's interpretation did. So I installed 2 security cameras. Nothing dramatic, just angles covering my driveway and yard. Evidence beats emotion. I started a log, dates, times, screenshots. Mrs. Garcia had a landscaping truck overnight 3 times that week, no notice. The Patels had a cargo trailer, no notice. Karen's buddy down the street had half her turf replaced with decorative shrubs, no notice. Selective enforcement is easy to prove when you're patient. Then one Tuesday, I came home from a ceiling fan job and found a county inspector standing in my driveway, clipboard in hand, serious expression. "Mr. Smith," he asked. "Yes, sir. We received a complaint about unlicensed commercial operations conducted from this residence." That word, unlicensed, has weight when your livelihood depends on credentials. I walked him through my garage, showed my contractor license, permits, paperwork, compliance documents. He looked around, measured clearances, checked storage, then closed his clipboard. Everything appears in order. I exhaled, and then he leaned in, lowered his voice like he was embarrassed to say it. "Between you and me, whoever filed this complaint called our office 4 times this week." 4 times. That wasn't concern, that was obsession. I watched him leave, and across the street Karen's blinds shifted just slightly. That's when the pattern came into focus. This wasn't about flowers or vans, it was about pressure. Slow, repeated, escalating pressure, the kind meant to make you tired and tired people comply. Then the equipment started showing up. First a landscaping trailer near the entrance sign, normal enough. Then a skid steer along the curb 3 houses down, idling longer than necessary. Then a dump truck yellow, loud diesel, heavy enough to make the air vibrate. The street stopped sounding like a neighborhood and started sounding like a job site. Karen stood near the machines with her clipboard, talking to a guy I recognized, her nephew Danny. Turns out Danny owned the landscaping company the HOA had hired the previous year, and when I asked one of the board members, Ree Patel, whether there'd been a competitive bid, he hesitated. "I don't remember voting on it," he said carefully. "Interesting. The trucks parked closer each day, always loud, always within sight." Mrs. Rodriguez said the exhaust was messing with her asthma. Mr. Thompson muttered about ambulances having trouble getting through. Karen dismissed it all. "Temporary staging," she said, "improving community infrastructure." Infrastructure like we were building a dam. Then came the email at 7:12 a.m., subject line, "Urgent potential electrical hazard." Karen wrote that a strong burning odor had been reported from my garage, and she cited an emergency safety clause allowing temporary action when there's reasonable belief of imminent danger. Reasonable belief, which is a fancy way of saying, I feel like it. I was already on a service call when the email hit. When I got back that afternoon, my driveway had been hijacked. Trailer in my driveway. Skid steer inches from my garage door, bucket angled so the door couldn't lift. Dump truck blocking the mouth of the driveway like a barricade. And Karen stood there like she'd staged a play and expected applause. "What happened?" I asked. "We received multiple reports," she said smoothly. "Concern about fire risk, we exercised emergency authority." "Who reported the smell?" I asked. She didn't answer. Just smiled that thin smile. Danny stepped forward. "We just needed to secure the area until everything checks out." "Checks out with who?" I said. "With the board," Karen replied. I already knew the board hadn't voted, but arguing in that moment would have been like yelling at a hurricane. I tried my opener, nothing. Red emergency release cord hanging loose through the window panel. They hadn't smashed anything, they'd just popped the mechanism and used heavy equipment as a perimeter. And I felt this weird calm, not peace, not acceptance, precision. Because I saw the truth. This wasn't about safety, it was leverage. That evening Riley called. "Dad, are you okay?" "Just dealing with neighborhood politics," I said, trying to keep my voice light. She went quiet, then asked, small and careful, "Are we going to have to move again?" That question landed harder than those trucks ever could. After the divorce, we'd already moved once, new school, new routines, new friends. Stability isn't a luxury, it's oxygen. "No," I said, and I surprised myself with how sure I sounded. "We're not moving." And right there, I realized what Karen was really threatening, not my flowers, not my van, my stability, the one steady thing I'd built with my own hands. So that night, I didn't sleep, I did math. I wrote facts on a legal pad. 3 commercial vehicles on my property, without consent, opener disengaged under a vague emergency, no documented board vote, obstruction over 36 hours, then longer and longer. I called Ree Patel. Quiet software engineer type, the guy who triple checks a spreadsheet before he breathes near it. "Did the board approve staging on my driveway?" I asked. Pause. "I don't recall voting on that." "Did you vote on an emergency hazard related to my garage?" Another pause. "No." Then I called my buddy Jake, another electrician, who'd done a service upgrade at Karen's house recently. He goes, "Marcus, you're not going to believe this." He told me about the structure behind Karen's house, framed walls, kitchenette, bathroom, separate entrance. He'd asked about load calculations for a rental unit, and Karen told him it was just storage. Storage doesn't need a stove, storage doesn't need bathroom exhaust fans, storage doesn't need that kind of load. I wrote it down. Then I pulled HOA financial records, monthly reports, expenditures, the stuff nobody reads because it's boring, and boring is where the bodies are buried. Danny's landscaping contract was way higher than previous years, no competitive bid, documentation, legal consultation fees spiking, labeled community safety advisement. Community safety again. And while I was staring at those numbers, neighbors started showing up. Mrs. Rodriguez with a folder of violation notices from the last year, Mr. Thompson with his fence citation, the Garcias frustrated and tired. We sat in my garage, my blocked garage, documents spread across my workbench like it was a crime show, and we were the underpaid detectives. Ree found something buried deep in the charter. Section 12. Board president may be removed by majority petition of homeowners 51%. How many houses? I asked. 132. So 67 signatures, I said. Nodded. No cause required. No cause, just participation. And that's when Karen escalated again, because of course she did. 3 days later, a sheriff's cruiser rolled up, and a deputy handed me papers. Temporary restraining order. Karen had filed in county court claiming harassment, intimidation, threatening conduct, said she feared for her safety. The order said I couldn't come within 100 feet of her residence, and wouldn't you know it, her house sat right in the center of the neighborhood like a control tower. With that radius, half the streets became a legal minefield. Door-to-door petitioning impossible. When the cruiser left, Karen stepped onto her porch and watched. No smile. No wave. Just watching. That move would have scared most people into disappearing. Courts are expensive, stressful, public, and the word fear carries a lot of weight on paper. But here's what Karen didn't understand. She didn't cut the power, she just forced it to reroute. Because the restraining order was for me, not for everybody else. That night, Ree came over. Jake came over. Mrs. Rodriguez came over. We sat in my garage like it was a bunker, and Jake goes, "You stay here, we'll do the walking." Over the next 5 days, I became the guy behind the scenes, organizing records, building timelines, printing financial documents, highlighting bylaw sections, making neat packets like I was prepping a job site inspection. Meanwhile, Ree and Jake went door to door. Mrs. Rodriguez talked to families in Spanish. Mr. Thompson hit the retirees who trusted him. They didn't threaten, they didn't dramatize, they showed evidence. Selective enforcement, conflict of interest, unapproved emergency actions. Signatures started coming in like rainfall, 32-47-60. The Petersons, the couple who'd filed a statement against me, quietly withdrew after admitting they'd been offered relief on back dues if they helped Karen. Funny how fear changes shape when money's involved. By the end of the week, 74 signatures. 7 more than we needed. Karen thought she'd isolated me. What she actually did was let the neighborhood see the pattern without me being the face of it, and when one person fights authority, it looks personal. When 74 households sign a document, it looks systemic. Friday morning, I watched the time like it mattered, because it did. The restraining order expired at noon. The trucks had been on my driveway 14 days. HOA Section 4B, the one Karen loved quoting, allowed commercial equipment storage for 4 hours without written homeowner consent. I never gave consent. At 12:01 p.m., I stepped outside. Karen was already there, clipboard in hand, Lexus parked at that perfect angle, face composed like she'd rehearsed. "Well, Mr. Smith," she said, "I hope we can move forward cooperatively now." I didn't argue. I didn't debate. I walked back into my garage through the side door, shut it behind me, pulled the emergency release cord again, clunk, slid the deadbolt pin into place, flipped the breaker, silent, then locked the side door, click. And I called the sheriff. "I need an officer to document commercial equipment obstructing access on my private property," I said calmly. "It has exceeded allowable time under HOA Section 4B 14 days. Deputy Martinez arrived, took one look at the alignment of the trucks and the way my driveway was blocked, and his eyebrows did that little lift cops do when they smell nonsense. "You the homeowner?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "You give permission for these vehicles to remain?" "No, sir." He nodded once, then walked over to Karen. "Ma'am, these vehicles are parked on private property without documented consent. They're also obstructing residential access. They need to be removed." Karen's composure flickered, just a crack. "This is authorized staging under emergency authority," she insisted. "How long?" the deputy asked. 14 days, I said, and I let the number hang in the air like a bad smell. A small crowd had gathered, Mrs. Rodriguez, Mr. Thompson, the Garcias, and then Ree stepped forward and handed the deputy a folder. "Petition," Ree said, simple, 74 signatures requesting removal of the HOA president under Section 12. Deputy Martinez accepted it without comment, and right then, like the universe had been waiting for its cue, a county code enforcement vehicle rolled up behind the patrol car. Karen turned so fast I thought her necklace might snap. "What is this?" The inspector stepped out, clipboard in hand, and spoke with the calm of a man who has seen 1,000 people lie with a smile. "We received a report regarding unpermitted residential conversion at your address," he said. "We'll need documentation for permits and also records regarding rental activity reported over the last 6 years." The street went quiet in a way that felt clean. No engines, no diesel, no fake emergencies. Karen looked at me. No smile now, not even a thin one. "This is harassment," she said tight. I shook my head slow. "No, Karen, this is participation." Within the hour, tow trucks arrived. One by one, the skid steer, the dump truck, the trailer hauled off my driveway. Dark stains of diesel left behind like footprints of a bad decision. When the last truck cleared the curb, the neighborhood sounded normal again. Just birds, distant lawnmowers, somebody's dog barking like it had opinions. I reset the breaker, re-engaged the opener, and my garage door rose smooth as butter. My tools sat exactly where I left them, order restored. Karen resigned 3 days later. Quiet email, personal reasons, health considerations, the usual graceful exit people use when the truth is too ugly to name. The board initiated an audit. Danny's contract got suspended pending review. The emergency authority clause got rewritten to require documentation within 24 hours. And the county did what the county does. Permits reviewed. Fines issued. Back taxes assessed. Not dramatic administrative, which honestly felt perfect, because the whole war Karen started was fought with paper. Here's the part that stuck with me though, the lesson I didn't expect. Power doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes it wears a blazer and drives a white Lexus, smiles politely, and counts on everybody being too tired or too polite to push back. And the scary thing is most of the time, that works, not because the bully is strong, but because the good people are quiet. But once people stop treating peace like it's the same thing as justice, once they actually participate, the whole game changes. The following spring, wildflowers started popping up in other yards. Not everywhere, not as a protest, just quietly. Mrs. Rodriguez planted native blooms along her fence. The Patels replaced some turf with drought-tolerant plants. Even Mr. Thompson planted a little patch by his mailbox, grinning like he'd pulled off a prank. No violation notices came. One afternoon, Riley was back in the garage helping me label bins, and she asked, "Did you know you were going to win?" I thought about it, the trucks, the court papers, the sleepless nights, her question about moving again. "No," I told her. "I didn't know we'd win, I just knew we couldn't fold." Because sometimes winning isn't about being louder, it's about being steadier, and being willing to read the fine print when somebody else is counting on you not to. Now here's the question that still messes with me. Where's the line between justice and retaliation? And if someone abuses power to hurt you first, do you ever owe them mercy? Or is karma just the bill finally coming due? Drop your take in the comments. Tell me what you think is right and wrong here, and if you've ever dealt with an HOA, a boss, a neighbor, anybody with a clipboard and a little too much authority, I want to hear your story, because I promise you're not the only one.